Hi, everybody. My name is Ami Reddy Lee, and we just waited a few minutes to get as many people on the line as we could before we got started here. I just want to welcome you to our session today, where we are launching our first session of SE Community Conversations. The topic for this session, which is the first of 6 sessions, is I'm with you, being in your space. I'm so delighted that we're getting this opportunity to be with you all today. I'm sure many of you have been on webinars and watching videos and poring over the internet for resources of how to support yourself and your clients in these times. Our intention for this session is that it is not simply a webinar, seminar, training session, although I think you're going to get some really wonderful tools, tips, and training out of being here. But we really are trying to do something a little funky and different with how we use Zoom. So we're trying to really create an intentional and deliberate space of conversations. That's tricky with 500 people on the line. So I invite you to just be here now, even though we cannot all see each other in Brady Bunch screens like many of us have recently on lots of Zoom calls. Just know that right now there's already 229 people on the line and more are coming moment to moment. So it's pretty special that we're all here together in this moment. I just really want to make that present for us as we begin these conversations and introduce you a little bit to the format of what we're going to be doing today. So the conversation format is that momentarily I will disappear from your screen. I will only play a role today as your host and moderator, but this is really a conversation between our esteemed Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute faculty members. And so over the course of the next hour and a half, they will be having a conversation about things related to the subject line and your questions. And we can see from their friendship and their wisdom and who they are together, what emerges in a good relationship over an online platform. That said, here's the tricky bit we're going to try. And I'm going to ask your patience up front because we're not sure exactly how this is going to work. We've run through a little bit, but I want to ask your patience as we sort this out. Like many Zoom webinars, you can see at the bottom of your screen, we will be collecting questions and answers as we go. Questions. So what I would love to request of our participants is go ahead and explore your screen right now. You'll find at the bottom of the screen, you should see a Q&A option. And if you click that open, that is the question box. And on there, you should be able to drop in a little line. If you'd like to say, hello, my name is, and where I am right now, not where I am, but where you are, as a little test of that feature, I'll invite you to do that. So I won't look at the first things that come in as questions. We'll just look at it as a little place where people might want to introduce themselves. We have quite a few somatic experiencing practitioners signed up for this session. So probably quite a few of you know each other. And so we're hoping to build a little community connection here. So I just saw Laura Spiegel in Vancouver, and Kathy Cherry in New York City. A few of you are starting to chime in. Piper in Oregon. Hi guys, wow, it's filling up fast. Fantastic. Welcome everybody, bonjour, and all of that. So great. So what I'm going to tell you for how the question and answer format will go is that when we do move into questions and answers, I'll ask you to drop your questions into that chat. You can all see each other's questions, so feel free to upvote a question if you share the same one. And I'll be taking note of that behind the scenes. And when Dave and Glindy are ready for additional questions, we'll be queuing some of them up and pitching them their way so they can answer them. Here's the fun part. We'd love to see all of your faces. In a perfect world, we'd see 500 faces on this screen right now and we'd get to really be with you. That was really Glindy's vision on this. And so what I want to do for us is when you ask a question, I'm going to ask you, put at the end of it, no video, if you do not want me to link to your video. But at some point, if you ask a question, I may say, hey, so-and-so, we're about to queue you up to ask your question. At that point, I'm going to attempt to bring you into presenter view so everybody who's online can see you and relate with you and probably share in very similar questions to what you're asking. And we're going to leave you visually and audibly online with Dave and Glindy while you're discussing that question. And then when that's complete, we'll close you out. We'll send you back to the attendee set, and then we'll bring in another person. So we'd love to do that if you're willing to be visually a part of this at those times. I assure you we cannot see you now, and you're all coming on the line muted. If you're wondering if we can hear you in the background, we can't. So we'll unmute you and we'll bring your video online. If you do not want to speak or do not want a video, please indicate that when you ask your question, okay? Just really appreciate that. And it won't indicate that we will or won't answer good questions, okay? Thanks so much, guys. If you have any questions about that, go ahead and post those in the sideline and I may be able to answer them depending on how our structure goes. We're really learning together these days, aren't we? It's kind of magnificent if you think about it. So with no further ado, I'd love to turn this over to our conversational leads on this session today. I'm so grateful to have Dave and Glindy leading today's session. Glindy Nickerson is a faculty member of the Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute and teaches SE in US and in Ireland. She holds a PhD in clinical psychology and has a bodywork, healing, and yoga teaching background. She's worked in community mental health and crisis response in Louisiana and in Western Massachusetts, overseas in South India with tsunami victims, with domestic abuse survivors, and also with Tibetan ex-political prisoners in northern India. She brings a wealth of passion and compassion to this conversation, and I cannot tell you what a delight it's been to work with Glindy in preparing this series for you. She'll be here each week as we feature different faculty in this conversation. The next I'd like to introduce you to is Dave Berger, a senior faculty member of the Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute, and he's on Dr. Peter Levine's legacy faculty with Ergos Institute as well. He teaches SE and his own base work, relational body work, and somatic education for trauma practitioners internationally. As a somatic psychotherapist, physical therapist, and body worker, he understands the broad range of knowledge and skills required for a trauma practitioner. These two are so delightful. I'm sure you're going to enjoy their conversation as much as we already have been preparing for you guys today. I will go ahead and ask you guys a question to start. Hi, Dave and Glindy.
Hey.
We can hear you guys both okay, I think.
Yeah, I hope so.
First question we're just going to launch you with. It's always fun to do online sessions and come up with weird, funky, cool names that may or may not be triggering, upsetting, pleasing, or delighting for anybody who joins in. But today's session is called I'm With You, Being in Your Space. Just want to ask you to go ahead and get us started by maybe chatting a little bit about that and what your thoughts are about that concept, if you wouldn't mind.
Great.
Yeah, I think that first of all, I'm really excited to do this, and thank you, Ami, for everything that you've done to help set this up. And also that Dave, you're so open to come on and do this kind of conversational format, and I'm just so excited. And in terms of working with the online medium, there is a sense of a different kind of orientation in space. So in terms of that title, I do feel like we're orienting to a person being in their space while we're in our own. We're not in the same shared physical space. So that's actually something that I think we can go into a little bit more, because it does require building a rapport. And we'll go into that a little bit more. Yeah. How about you, Dave?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic that happens, right? I'm either here in this room or I'm in another room in my house working with clients or doing consults online, and I can see people's personal space, their homes, which is different than seeing what I'm used to seeing all the time, my office. And so it's very different. I hold it as I'm being invited in to a part of their world that I don't usually get invited into. You know, it's one thing to be invited into someone's emotional life, their practical life, help them through trauma history. but here we are in a very different dynamic. And so when I'm working with people in this way, I hold, well, many intentions, but two in terms of space and boundaries and the like. One is, oh, they've invited me in, and they might even not even know that consciously, right? Invited me into their home. And simultaneously, I've invited them into my home because I'm not going into my office right now. So that's one. And then the other is, how do I do that? How do I hold that intention? How do I connect? How do I kind of read what's happening in their physiology? And as we do in SE, when I can't see part of their body, when they can only see part of me, and is that the same or different than if they were in my office, right? So it's like a different dynamic in many ways, not just because it's flat screen, but in many ways it's different.
Indeed. Yeah, and I feel like when we're talking about taking in this new medium, a lot of that also has to do with really allowing a person in their own space to take in where they are, to really settle and be present in their own space. And part of that too would be, making sure that this is really private time for them as much as possible. If you have, you can have a partner or family or someone to look after the kids. I have my dog being looked after by somebody right now because he really likes to go after the delivery men and he makes a terrible bark. So there's a lot of different aspects to just letting this be time where you feel like the door can be closed and this can be special time between you and your client. And
Yeah.
that's going to help everybody's nervous system relax a bit.
Yeah.
Along with that taking in is the eyes are so important in that, and really letting the eyes relax and feel comfortable to explore both their environment as well as us and ours. So as practitioners, how do they feel about looking into our world, as Dave was talking about? And even that could bring up some activation. So working with activation, settling cycles will be happening at a hopefully titrated level where people can settle into this relationship and feel pretty transparent around sharing how this is.
Yeah.
So that could be a great entry for dialogue around, how is this for you? How is it to see me in this different way? And how is it, do you feel connected right now? And what would help that?
Yeah. That reminds me too, we talk about orienting a lot in SE, right? We orient to the present moment, to the visually, auditorily, tactilely, we orient, but also in just what you're saying, right? That helps people orient, oh, here you are. What's it like for you that I see your bedroom. I see you're sitting on your bed. What's it like for you? Well, I wonder if you've had this happen with clients at all. And how you've navigated this. I had it happen just yesterday, where your client is, in whatever room of the house, and someone in their home just walks right through.
Yeah.
Right, during a private session with you, right? But has that happened with you while you've been?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And somebody just kind of pops in, and I'm going, oh.
Right.
Oh, it's this idea that I've had in my head that it's just the two of us, and suddenly there's this awareness that there's a third person or more, and sometimes kids come running in and join in, and it's part of the dance right now too, because people are in close quarters, and that privacy factor may not be as easy to maintain right now.
Right. I had it happen yesterday, working with this client, and his roommate walked right through. I'm thinking, wow, I'm really glad that didn't happen 3.5 minutes ago, because there was so much intensity at that moment, and he's settling and he's easing up, and it was actually great because it sort of helped bring him out of the intensity of the moment, and that activation is like, oh, I'm not alone here. Right? There's my roommate walking by, and it actually in a certain way helped him regulate. Which would have happened in the office, but it would have happened very differently. It's sort of like this, and it's not going to be with everybody. He's relatively grounded. He's not just significantly dissociative. So it would be different with other people, but it's almost like doing therapy in a more real world environment when you can sort of walk with the client there, let's say. It can be really helpful in a certain way, I'm finding.
Yes, yes. I'm curious about that when you say you find it helpful. Love to hear that because I feel the same.
Well, for him at least, and this has happened a couple of times, and certainly it's happened when I've done consults with SEPs and SE students and base students and all, where someone will walk through their home, their room, their home office, and it's more of a real world environment for them. So the activation that might happen at home with this person or that person, or thinking about an event that they've experienced, is there, but they are, because I'm there holding the container for it, then they might not get as activated or as dissociative or as thrown off, let's say, as they might if they were in my office, where I'd also be containing it and holding it, but perhaps allowing it to go to a little bit more of a threshold, right? So in a certain way, it could help titrate the amount of work, the amount of activation or dissociation that might otherwise occur, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this working online too. We have this kind of frame, right? We're not seeing the whole room in a 360 way. And because of that, there are things that are outside of the view that we're not aware of. And that's true also for the other person. So that's why this orienting process and just encouraging people to be aware of their own environment, particularly what's resourcing for them, what's helpful for them, and registering that in the body. And you had mentioned that the client was more grounded. So we can also talk a little bit about all these great tools that we have in SE to help people be more in the present moment and more grounded, you know, feeling into the body, feeling into the sense of gravity that connects us to the ground, to the chair. Even me just saying that, I just got a deeper breath.
I saw that, yeah.
Body, right?
Yeah.
And so now you're tracking me right now. You notice that deeper breath. So that also brings us to how we can really track well. And in some ways, there's some advantage, even though we don't see the lower body, we do need to have them report more in terms of what's happening in the lower body because we can't see everything if we're in this kind of closer frame. But it's also true that when we're doing this kind of work, we can also have a sense in ourselves of this tracking, because a little bit easier in some ways. You might notice that there's some ways that it can even be easier because we're working with this one frame. We're not as distracted in a certain sense.
Well, right, that's really true. And that brings up, for me, an area of SE and trauma work that really I think is one of my greatest passions, which is what is tracking, or in the body work I call it listening with your whole being. And we do talk in the training about these different levels, right? So there's the obvious, the musculoskeletal, when a fight response begins to come on board, or a looking around, right? We can see that, right? And then there's the more subtle, which includes heart rate, pulse rate, the shifting and the typical coloration of someone's skin, the turgor of their skin, breathing patterns and all. And then there's the super subtle, which are the physiological changes that they're not necessarily visible, right? And in like movements are, or these other breathing patterns and all, they're not visible, they're sensible, right? We can sense them. This is the physiological conversation that an infant and a parent have. That we know intuitively, implicitly. We know this implicitly, but we're often trained out of it. And a really skilled tracker, listener, SE practitioner, base practitioner is listening through this lens, this super subtle sensing lens. And I find that, of course, paying attention to me and sensing a client in this medium really helps refine that. That we think we have to see in order to track, but really, there are times even when I'm in the same room, I'm physically present with the client, that my eyes are not paying complete attention to them, but I am. I'm deeply, intimately attuned, but I remove the visual so I receive more information. And using this video platform is a great way to practice that skill set.
Great. Yeah. So I'm hearing you talking about that kind of attuning with the resonance and the way that as we listen with our whole bodies, we're picking up things that are happening relationally as well as within the client's system. And one of the ways that we can also introduce this with clients is through invitational language. And I always like to say, you know, from over here, this is what I'm experiencing, and I'm curious what you're experiencing over there, just so that it doesn't become a merging or it doesn't get confusing for folks. And I'm not telling them what their experience is, but it also may be a way that we can dialogue about what I'm picking up and observing, as well as what from their movements or from their breath or from their skin tone. So they feel heard and attended to, which is something that, you know, in that mother or that caregiver child dyad, we really want to have experience when you're younger, and often we missed it, right? There's often pieces that are missing, and for some folks more than others. And that attuning quality can very much happen in this medium as well as it does already in our offices.
Yeah, I think you bring up such a vitally important point here that in SE, we are really ultimately working with the relational dynamic, which of course includes attachment and bonding strategies and dynamics, healthy, resilient ones and traumatized ones. We're just not naming it necessarily as such. We're sort of working with the substrata of it all the time. I like to use the word whiffed. When a client feels whiffed in that way, oh, I get it. Not I know it. I feel that you are with me. Right? That's the deep attunement. And that's why this is such deep relational work, not just shock trauma work. There are so many levels we're working with at one time in SE.
Yeah, and as we are new with a new client, and perhaps we are also new with this medium, I also really encourage people to let that process be as transparent as you're comfortable with, helping you know, that dialogue to happen, so that when the client is kind of feeling self-conscious and maybe keeps looking at their own visual, their own video, they can minimize that if that's helpful. But just to help them too is just to play around even with how far away or how close. And that's actually a process that is kind of like that boundary exercise stuff that we do in SE.
Yeah,
And
I like that. I like that.
And then we kind of actually titrate that, like, how close do you want me to be? And also titrating eye contact. You know, how is this for us to be looking directly at each other? Would you like it like we're a little bit more like sitting on a porch, you know, maybe looking out together and having a bit of a chit chat, where I might kind of look over every now and again. As you mentioned earlier, you may be orienting in your own space, Dave, but you're also aware of the system as you're working.
Yeah.
I also like to say to clients, it's like there's my system, there's your system, and then there's something that we create together. And that something that we create together is this holding environment where we're both sensing together, and we can talk about that. And if at any time something feels uncomfortable, we can adjust and adapt, both with, how, the frame, like I was doing here, or also the way we're making contact. Sometimes there can be a feeling of too much direct gaze. For some folks, that might
Mhm.
stimulate that approach avoidance system, that prey dynamic system. And it can feel easier. And that can be a great way to introduce tracking. It's like, I feel so much more comfortable having a look around, looking outside, seeing like the raindrops on my window right now, looking at some of the budding green. I'm in Massachusetts here at the moment. And there was a little bit of a breath. Something just
Mhm.
brought me back in.
Yeah, the whole right side of you just settled down a little bit.
Great. Yeah. And we can, I was wondering actually, Dave, how you would feel about just practicing tracking a little bit as I'm orienting, because that actually is really helpful for me to hear that you're seeing me
Mm.
there.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah,
that I feel seen and I feel supported because you're with me in that way that you're tracking.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm just going to keep tracking if that's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I'm going to keep orienting. So I'm
So
just,
you might even notice your jaw and neck, right? Your jaw and neck right now, what's happening there?
right. Yeah, and even as I turned my neck, I was noticing a little deeper breath. And yeah, something's opening up a little bit here.
Hmm.
I feel just a little bit more aware of my whole body than when I was just looking at the screen, which is interesting.
Yeah, and as you were doing that, from my end, it was as though your whole body landed in the chair just a little bit more.
Yeah, that's
You
exactly
feel
what
that?
I felt. Yeah, I actually felt more in my seat and
Yeah,
felt more in my back body,
yeah,
which
yeah, yeah,
is
yeah. Like it's warming up right now. Like it's warming up right now.
right. My back body's warming up.
It's well, from 3,000 miles away, it seems like it, but I'd ask you
Good
about
cracker.
that.
Impressive, Dave. Yeah, so it does actually feel that way. And so I'm just much more aware of my back body. I'm much more aware of my kidneys, my seat, my hips. And interesting because now
Whoa.
yeah,
Boom.
what
Yeah,
happened?
like dropped into your belly, into your pelvis. Yeah.
Right. You're picking that up in your own physiology or through observation right now.
You know, people ask me how I do that. It's very difficult to put it into words, but there's a sensing that informs me of areas of the body or depths of physiology that let me know something's going on there. And I can get a sense as if it's going up in that direction or that direction, more toward an arousal activation level or more toward a settling level. Or, if it starts to go dissociative, I'll pull somebody out. But how to exactly put that in words is difficult. And I think that's because each dyad has their own somatic conversation,
Mm.
and it's a different dialect with a different dyad.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
And so it's very hard to put it in words. An SEP and base practitioner mentee of mine a number of years ago said, "Oh, I finally get it. What's happening in the body is it's not English is her primary language. It's not English. It's speaking physiology." Right?
Mm.
And it was great. It was such a wonderful way she put it. Yeah, and physiology conversation is just that. It's two or three or four people having a conversation, not through here. And so it's going to be a little bit different with different dialects, really. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And yes, we're developing this languaging with each person that we're working with. And for some people that felt sense that developed capacity for interoception is already online. Like you're mentioning
Yeah.
the client who had that sense of grounding and connection. And for some folks, we're also working in this online medium where they don't have that interoceptive body sensing capacity yet fully online.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be really, really valuable, and it is something that you can do to start developing that. And through all the kind of ways that you may have been doing in your office. although, you know, there's a few adaptations. And one thing that I just wanted to play around with just for a moment is
Yeah.
for me to actually move my computer screen back, and I would talk to the client about this before I would do it, so they weren't like, what's going on? Where'd you go? And it's just enough so I can actually just have the client see my whole body, and so that there's a sense of a little bit different frame, which can actually help that ventral vagal if they're comfortable, and help people get a little bit more comfortable in this medium for us to do a little introspective work together. So that's kind of what people call body scans sometimes, you know, but just, you know, moving joints or whatever you feel comfortable with. Go ahead. What were you about to say, Dave?
Oh, no, I just said that's a great idea. Let's do that. Oh, look at that. I haven't gotten to see outside your window
great.
yet.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Some nice trees out there. Everybody can orient.
Oh, I feel more settled seeing the outdoors. I can see outdoors behind my computer screen, but it's just to know that in another house. So.
Right. So let me. So here I go. I'm still with you. I'd like to
see. So even this is great because we've been on Zoom many times in the past number of weeks, but I've never seen the rest of your office or that room, and so even that helps me feel a little more expansive.
Can you see me? I don't think you can see.
I can. Yeah.
Enough of me anyway?
Yeah, I can see all the way down to your ankles.
Oh, great. Okay, good. I'm glad I have my socks on. Great. So, you know, just being able to see the whole body a little bit. Now, you're very small over there, but I can still see you. I can see you're nodding. I can see you're with me, right? And so beginning to just move a little bit. Can you see my ankles moving?
I can, and actually I'm starting, without even thinking about it, I'm starting to mirror you a little bit, right? So I'm wiggling in my chair a little. I would stand up, but you'd see next to very little of me, so I won't, but yeah.
Great, so I'm just shifting side to side, just being aware of the weight in my body, and then just shifting, and just, I'd like to just invite everybody to just sense into, how do you know if you're shifting side to side in your chair, or maybe you're standing up right now, just shifting side to side, just pausing a moment, and letting your body register in that way that Dave's talking about how do I know that this is, you know, this is happening in my body right now, because I'm not looking necessarily down. You could to see that you're shifting weight, but there's something else that's telling us this. So this might be very elementary for some folks, but for a lot of folks, this is the very beginning of establishing that ability to interocept, to be embodied, to start that quality of having this body map that helps our stabilization and helps us do SE. This is very foundational level, right? So just moving, maybe doing ankle circles, make sure that people have enough support if you're asking them to stand on one leg. I can get a bit wobbly. Yeah. So, and then doing the other ankle, right? Just moving the joints. Knees.
Yeah, I'm doing it sitting, so.
Right. Right, yeah, so you can do that, and then I'm bending my knees and feeling a broad base of support, and then moving forward on the balls of my feet, and then back onto the heels of my feet, and a broader base. Feel how that's different than standing with the feet closer together. What feels right? Yeah. And that can be working through the entire system, you know, up through the spine, the shoulders. I won't go through it all. Rolling shoulders is often a nice thing to get that orienting system going, because it's part of that architecture of orienting when we're looking around and noticing if we're safe. Yeah.
Cindy, is this something you would advise other therapists to be doing with their clients and coaches, or would you have them asking their clients to do that? I just noticed when you started to go into these exercises, it just got a lot more real. Like it just got much deeper when you started to do that. And everybody at home could be doing that with you right now. But as a practitioner online, would you have them doing that with their clients? And go ahead and do some more exercises with us, guys. Those are really fun when you're talking about orienting. I know we have about 300 SEPs on the line and about 100 students, but we also have a lot of people who've never heard of SE. It's wonderful, really wonderful to be with you guys in this conversation, and you're walking us through things and letting us know how we can use that with our clients. And also we're getting a lot of questions that are really moving towards asking about it in light of COVID-19. So we're wanting to move on to telehealth, but and I'm going to get people on to start asking you guys some questions shortly, so you can see their faces and interact with them directly. But I want to tell you, everybody's asking about, what about right now? So gear up. I'd love to start moving into that, and just keep giving us some exercises if you don't mind. It's just so fun to be with you guys doing those together. Thanks.
Yeah. Glindy?
Yeah, so these exercises, absolutely, I encourage people, if this is part of their a skill set that they're already doing, or if it's something that they're developing for themselves, it can be a great way for folks to feel grounded in their own selves at home. It also gives them a great tool if you're new to SE. So grounding, orienting, being in your fully in your 5 senses is very stabilizing. And especially during times right now with COVID-19 and this pandemic that's happening, it's more important than ever for us to find the resources that really help us to be able to ground and be centered, especially for ourselves as practitioners. If we're not grounded, we're not really going to be that much help to anybody else. So how do we do that for ourselves? How do we connect with ourselves? And like before I come on, and I've been doing this especially more lately, if I've been feeling more activated, I actually do a little bit of a sing-song thing with my voice to get my ventral vagal system going. And I do a little drumming sometimes. That really helps me. I do some grounding, some movement. I also scrunch up my face. So, and that's something I know Dave does. Yeah, works a lot. Great. Yeah. And all of that just helps to loosen up the facial system, that face-heart connection. Would you like to add to that, Dave?
And I think a direct answer to Ami's question also is, would we do these with the client? Yes, absolutely. I would demonstrate it. I'd join in. I'd probably give these sorts of things as homework too. Yeah. And some things about COVID-19, we have to address it. We can't not. We're holding it. One of the upsides is we're holding it internationally. So this physical distancing we have to do right now, in some ways, can bring us socially more together, right? So that's an important thing to hold, and I'll name that with clients. There are so many multiple levels of this threat that's going on. And the response to it, as it is to many threats, is to go into immobility. Is what do I do? And that becomes fear, and it becomes terror, and it becomes shutdown, and it becomes this, that. And it's all that sympathetic nervous system energy in our body that we then interpret, right, limbically, and begin to name cortically as fear, as terror. And so there's this energy in our body to something we can't see, to something we think we might have inside of us or do have inside of us. And that's stirring, and it can create agitation. And that fight energy internally is our immune system, of course. And the energy needs to go to our immune system if we are infected. But if we're not, and if we are, some of that fight energy, that sympathetic energy may get expressed outwardly. I was hearing reports a week and a half ago, last week, and even more of them now, that domestic violence has been on the rise, abuse has been on the rise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when I'm working with clients, when I'm doing consultations, I'm trying to reframe this a little bit, that's the expression of all this on the inside, and it's got to get out, and it's got to get out. So other ways to get it out. And I'll do this with clients. We'll get up, we'll move, we'll shake, we'll do some jumping jacks to get it mobilized. Go out for a walk, get outside. If you really have a lot of that energy, take it out on your mattress just a little bit, not too much. Don't overdo it. Like one good swat, whatever you do to a mattress, once, but feel it, feel it. Don't take it out on your kid. Don't take it out on your partner, right? But it's the attempt to shed all this fight energy that's getting stuck and now getting stuck indoors. So mobilization is really important. Wiggle, move, get the smovies out.
Oh, great.
Right? Get them out and move them. Or half-filled water bottles if you don't have these. Or tennis balls. I have this, I keep it at my desk, right? And I keep it below the screen. And I'm moving it around. I'm throwing it back and forth in my hands. I'm squeezing it. And I encourage clients to do the same thing. Mobilize, get the energy out of your body. And if the energy is in the other direction, more depressive direction, isolation, right? I'm sleeping longer than I usually do, right? It's 500 milligrams of willpower 30 times a day. Get yourself up, go for a walk, do jumping jacks, just swing, put some music on. I have a friend who, he never dances, never. And he sent me this little video of him dancing to some music in his room. That was great. He started mobilizing himself up out of the depression he was falling into.
And for so many, oh, go ahead,
Guys, it's just such a great time to introduce some questions that really are connecting with what you're saying. So
great.
Thanks for bearing with me as we figure out our format. If I pop on the screen, if it's okay, trying to as politely as I can interrupt and let you hear from some people. Sally Ramsey asked a question that everybody is upvoting a lot. There's in the Q&A, people are able to upvote what they're really interested in. So Sally, I'm going to unmute you right now. And I'm in the unmuting, I'm just going to ask you, are you okay with us bringing you have to unmute your computer yourself. I unmuted your permissions. And are you okay with us bringing your video on screen? And would you be willing to ask this question?
Sure.
Okay, it might be funny for a minute. It'll say it's promoting you to panelist, which is kind of weird. And it might seem like it disengages for a second, and then you'll be on with us. When you're on, I'll cue you up to go ahead and ask your question to Dave and Glindy and see where we go with this, okay?
Okay.
Hi, Sally. Oh, I think you have to unmute, Sally.
I think we've got her.
There's unmuted.
I'm going to ask you to start your video.
Okay.
We're going to spend as much as we can with Zoom. Great.
There we go.
There you are. Thanks.
Ah, there's your face.
Hey.
Oh my gosh, it's so good to see everybody. Oh my gosh, just to see you guys. Boy, what a holy moment. I have been working about 9, 10, 11 hours a day. I'm on my butt a lot, so I have a watch that tells me to go outside and walk and do my yoga and do my self-care and do my grounding. So that's been really helpful. But I live near 2 major hospitals, the Cleveland Clinic and University Hospital. I am on call for staff, people on the front lines. I have been doing everything I can to help teach like the skills that we all know so well, teaching orienting, teaching grounding, teaching working with your thoughts. And my question is really, what are the most important things that I could share with someone, like if I only have 15 minutes to, you know, direct and give a little example, a little taste, a little flavor of how this works, and then to be able to present some bullet points or something that they could share with each other in the pressure cooker of COVID, you know, units.
Wow. Well, thanks for helping them. It's hard work. It can, as a practitioner, you can sometimes feel helpless, right? In the helping. And so I was talking about this with somebody just the other day, that when, for example, a nurse goes from one patient to the next patient, or a physician goes from a patient to talk with a team member and then to another patient, to pay attention, to exhale, soften your tongue, exhale. You don't have to run from patient to patient unless it's an emergency. Then sometimes you do. But if you don't have to run, feel your steps going over there. Take a 3-second vacation, right? Allow yourself the permission to think about something else for those 3 seconds and then come back, right? That's a way to titrate it. It's a way to pendulate away from the constant, not 100%, not like, oh, okay, now I'm good, right? But a little bit can go a really long way, a really long way.
Right. I've started using the ball, like while you guys were moving. I was so enjoying that. I was doing abs, I was doing breathing, and I'm now learning how to keep my torso somewhat steady while my hips are wiggling.
Oh.
And I love to be able to be playful, because if I'm breathing and I'm grounded and I'm playful, then I can guide someone else in that direction.
Yeah.
Any other comments from either one of you would be very, very important. And I'll be continuing to ask more questions as we go along.
Great. Yeah, I would love to just address what, I'm hearing you talk about your way. First of all, also, thank you so much. You're working so hard. You're helping so many people. And, I get a sense in talking with you that you have this connection with your own resources and with that ventral vagal system. And that is what we're really helping people to get in the shortest amount possible. And it's absolutely possible to do that within a few minutes. And some of the things that we're talking about, orienting, grounding, also a little bit of doing the movement, engagement also for me with my face. I let myself become a little bit more engaged, not so much in a challenging way, but just so that my eyes, I just want to make sure my eyes are expressing and that my body's moving. Also, that mobilizing. I was just about to add this when Dave was sharing earlier too, but when we're having tension and constriction happening in our systems, either from fear or irritation, from the COVID-19 thing, because we're in close quarters. Like I definitely had a few moments the other day of feeling pretty irritated, and I just looked at my drum. I have this little drum, and I kind of beat the hell out of it for a while. And it felt so good. It wasn't about how intensely I was hitting it. It was actually just that it gave me something to mobilize with. Nice. And to feel like I could do something with my body and make sound in the world. That is a very ventral vagal process, right? And making rhythm, which creates more coherence. And so then I ended it with actually just doing a little bit of a heartbeat rhythm. And that started to calm me down. It helped me to settle. So there's lots of tools. We don't have to have a drum for that. That's like a sound making process, also with your voice and with singing. However, people are getting very creative right now. And I think that's pretty amazing. And for us, in terms of our own regulation, looks like you have an idea about that, Sally.
Well, I have a drum like right here, and I had to share it.
Oh, nice.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Hey, I was doing exactly what you were doing. So we must be joined in mind, because I went outside and I just did this heartbeat, and I allowed the whole neighborhood to hear it. And pretty soon people at a house across the way who have a screen and porch, they started clapping, in a rhythm. And I thought, oh, this could be kind of fun. But I needed that same thing, that vibration to move energy. Thank you.
One other thought about the people you're working with who are on the front lines, and I think then we'll probably go to another question, is when they are moving, when they go from their car into the hospital, for example, or home, going back home, transition time is important, but when they're going from the bathroom, when they're in the bathroom, or going back from patient to patient, how about just move your arms up and around and stretch? That changes your breathing pattern.
Yes.
Why not do while you're walking down the hallway?
Yes.
Get that exhalation all the way, hold it out. So the oxygen carbon dioxide ratio can begin to shift.
I love it.
Bring what we do in the office into function. bring it into function.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. This is wonderful. Sally, thanks for being our first person jumping on. Just want to add in the cool chat we have going on. Each week we're going to get a little better at figuring out how to do questions, and it's wonderful to be with you guys all relating. It's even different than hearing you guys talk to each other. So thanks, Sally. And I just want to point out to you that 2 people in the chat say they're in it as well. Another person's in Cleveland as well. I see Amy Hendricks. Someone else just wrote in. They're with you. So you know, it's wonderful, guys, that we can encourage each other in this time and stay connected to Glindy and Dave and also each other as you're going through this.
Yeah.
If you haven't, Sally, I'm going to go ahead and send you back to the realm of the participants as we gear up someone else. Thanks for
Thank you, Sally. Good to see you.
You too.
and then and guys, if you might be noticing we have a Q&A going on, Dave and Glindy, and in there people can thumbs up questions they're really interested in. So I want to bring all the participants' attention over to that for a minute. I've been fumbling through figuring out how to work with it well. Thanks for hanging with me. But in there, people are saying what ones they're more interested in. So go ahead and thumbs up the questions that are really compelling to you guys, so we make sure we get some good answers to them. There's one that has a ton more than others. So I'm going to be queuing up Nicole shortly. Nicole, you're going to be next on my list if you're okay with that. I'm going to unmute you before I do that, just to say, Nicole, if you unmute yourself, can you tell us if you're okay with me bringing you online?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. So I'll start to transition you, and right before Nicole gets here, a different question from Nicole's, but I wanted to bring up because it also came in online in email. An SEP wrote in, I've been working with an expat who is stuck overseas fighting the virus alone. She says it's pretty advanced in her. I did classic SE and was able to get her an hour. Got Pedialyte for the first time in 3 days and fell asleep. So in the middle of the night, her fever advanced and she was able to call the ER where she is now, but the SE works here. So I just want to put that out there because I know some of you might be starting to think about what do I do if that happens. So keep paying attention and be thinking about how this can apply to your clients and all the things they're going through. And Nicole's question, just so you know, guys, like she has double the amount of thumbs up on it. Like a lot of people are really, really interested in what she has to say. So Nicole, I'm going to unmute you now. Thanks so much, and I'll jump off.
Hi, Glindy.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Nicole. Great to see you.
So I have at least 3, maybe 4 clients that are having to do sessions from their car because they don't have a space in their house that they can do it. Some don't even, like one sleeps in the living room, and some just, the house isn't a safe space. Like they don't feel safe in the space. And I'm noticing they're struggling a lot more. They're really missing the safety of the office setting to meet. And I'm having a harder time like orienting them, you know, like we orient to the trees outside and we orient to, you know, the birds or the clouds or things like that. And that's helpful. But I just wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, both the car setting and the lack of safety in the home.
Right. And then there are people who are houseless, homeless as well. And the environment is not safe. And now the environment is not safe, even more so, right? So here's a concept, and then some ideas from both of us as well. It's the concept is, can someone begin to feel the feeling of relative safety, even within an environment that might not be safe, right? So another way to say that is, can I exhale? Can I soften? Can I relax a little bit and be in my body, even in an environment that is dangerous or potentially dangerous or not completely safe? Or do I need to go into this or this in the environment? And I'd say the answer is no. I just have to learn how to get there and then be, and that's really any kind of pervasive threat environment, right? Can I ground? Can I soften? Can I be present? Can I exhale? and be in this environment. And so one thing to consider is that how wonderful that those clients have made a choice to choose to work with you from their car, or maybe outside on a picnic table, depending on where someone's living. You know, if you're in Massachusetts right now, it's going to be different than if you're in Southern California as far as temperature goes, right? But they're making choice, and I would really bring that to the foreground, because a hallmark of being traumatized is the reality and or the belief, I have no choice, right? So there's choice. So I bring that forward. And you know, a lot of the same strategies orienting what happens when I see, feel, sense where I am, which is not there. I'm here, right? In those ways. What Glindy and I were sort of playing with at the very beginning, when she's orienting, she drops more into her body. Can you sense that? Can you, yeah, there, now you're there. Now you're there more than you were a moment ago. And the movement and the strategies, the tools that we were kind of playing with a little bit earlier.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Dave's saying in terms of relative safety. When we're working with folks who are not having that sense of a safe perception of safety in the home, there can be a lot that we can do about feeling that capacity within our own systems to recognize what is relatively safe. And that on its own is a sense of agency that Dave's pointing to, which in itself is a tremendous resource. And focusing on that capacity, and that they are in cars. I've certainly been in a car and had a Zoom session before, you know, in times where I'm outside of my normal environment in a different city and there hasn't been a private space. And it's certainly interesting for us to start to go, okay, this is different. And I'm noticing that constriction in my system. Sometimes when we have that bracing too, Dave was talking about this a little bit too, is letting ourselves actually feel into it a little bit and even exaggerating that a little bit. You know, if that's a scrunching up of the shoulders, and we can do that together, which actually brings a bit more of a ventral experience to that, and then releasing out of that. It's a little bit like a facilitated pendulation. And then tracking how there's micro moments of settling, shifts that happen, you know, increasingly a little bit more settling. We're not looking for day to turn into night, night to turn into day. We're looking for just subtle shifts, and reminding folks that's how things shift, is a little bit at a time. And to feel a little bit more of ourselves, to feel ourselves on the ground a little bit more, is helpful overall, and will help us to be able to make good decisions when we're not feeling safe in our environment.
Yeah. Some people's traumas, I'm finding, are related to safety. So
Yes.
they're being triggered a lot with this, what's going on. And so then it's like they're not feeling safe with their partners. They're not feeling safe with the people around them. They're feeling just less safe in general.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of, as I'm thinking of that, I'm like, okay, how am I going to get them to notice even just the tiny little shifts in orienting to the safety?
Yeah, you bring up a really, really important point, that when with pervasive threat of any sort, and you know, the big one right now for the whole world is this thing that we can't see, which is the virus. But our response to that will be overcoupled with other pervasive experiences, threatening experiences we've had. Marginalized populations, marginalized people. People have experienced racism, anti-Semitism, gender, etc. Name your ism, right, in a certain way, and on. So I was walking down the street a couple of days ago, and of course, like many of us are doing now in my area, many areas around the country, we're walking, and then there's this kind of, I'm going to go around this person, right? Mm-hmm. And the very first cognitive, the very first thought I had was, oh, how are they experiencing me going away from them? I want to make sure that I look and say hi. Because if I'm walking this and I do that, right, well, that person might have experienced that over and over and over again as a racist, subtle response to difference, right? And that's an example. Those are going to overcouple, right? So we need to help someone go, yeah, well, they're walking around because we've been told to right now. But that's not necessarily in the conscious mind, right? It's a bottom-up implicit response. And that's one small example of 100 other examples of that. And so prior trauma experiences, pervasive and or shock, are going to percolate up right now. And our job is to help keep someone present, feel in, with all the strategies and more that we know in SE. Right here, right now, in this moment is not right then, 5 minutes ago when you came out of the house and went into the car. Right? As an idea, wiggle, move around. This is different than then.
Yeah, and it's also great and to make sure that people have an emergency, if you have an emergency phone number for your client, somebody else to contact in case something does happen. And this is just sort of basic, also just safety stuff, so that you have, your client knows that there's a way that they can be reached. Also to have their physical address is important in case for some reason you needed to call 911. You might be working with somebody who's sick and then suddenly has a coughing fit and they're like, where did they go? Yeah. So we want to have ways that we can check in with them other than this one medium, because it's not like they're physically there. So we need to be able to make sure that we can contact them in another way. And also, people who they're comfortable, that we can reach out to, and making sure that you have that down. That comes into informed consent, which is different for each person.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. I think that was a really great dialogue. You guys, people were really interested in that. It sounds like something we need to be keeping in mind as we support our communities. A lot of practitioners don't have a safe place to practice themselves.
Right.
And are being therapists from their cars. And so that's tricky. And I love what you said, Dave, about just acknowledging what's real, I think is a really essential foundation of somatic experiencing. I heard you say acknowledging the client's choice to meet with you while they were in the car. And I guess I just wanted to say and Glindy, your thoughts too, it seems okay to acknowledge the therapist's choice too, right? To say, we're all in this right now, but it's so meaningful to me to be with you that I wanted to do it from my, normally we might not talk about ourselves, but it seems like it might be worthwhile to share, it was really meaningful to me to make this time for you, even to do it from my car, if you might notice the rearview mirror and orient to it, you guys think that makes sense? Is that reasonable?
I think that there are times that we really have to acknowledge that we're people who are therapists, who are practitioners. We're not practitioners who are people, right? We're people first. And then there are boundaries and there are limits and disclosure, et cetera, that each practitioner decides on their own. But yeah, we're people, yeah.
All right, well, to people, thank you, people, Nicole Thornton. Everybody, I'm sure is grateful for what you had to share. I'm gonna move you back to the attendee status if we're cool with that. Thank you again. And then guys, coming up next, we have a question from Samantha Persoff. Samantha, I'm going to unmute you just to see if you're okay with us bringing your video online. If you just, yes, okay, cool. Then I'm going to start to transition you over, and while she's transitioning to be on the panel with you guys, this also relates to the question she's about to share with you. It's another reading from that same person who wrote to me, who's working with folks overseas. She said, I just did another Pure SE session. My client went to the ER last night, was scanned and tested, has COVID and pneumonia in both lungs. Oh, this is hard. But the hospital has no beds, so they sent her home. So she said, when we started, she was choking and gasping for breath and sobbing. Within 15 minutes of practicing SE interventions, Her system had shifted a few times. She had more space to breathe. And after close to an hour, she had not coughed and was able to go to sleep for the evening. So it's just more things. Like, it's just coming naturally to you guys to talk about the orientation and the things. And for those of you who don't know somatic experiencing, these are the kinds of things you learn in our training that I really hope you may explore a little bit more. I'm also going to say one more thing before we get Samantha on. Classically, the Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute offers in-person trainings. Go ahead and go to our website, traumahealing.org, and look up, what the structure of our training is. We have a beginning, intermediate, and advanced year. Did I get those backwards? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, and it's an amazing program. I'm in it as a student right now. My life is being transformed. My nervous system I'm getting more freedom around it. I thought it meant I would be calm all the time. And what it meant is I'm actually just becoming more grounded in my range of up and down. So I want to encourage you all to look at that program if you're not already in it. If you're students, I'm really glad you're here and we're staying connected while you're gone from the training, since we don't have them at the moment. And for everybody, when you're a member with the SE Trauma Institute, you get access to all kinds of cool webinars. We do them all the time. Often our webinars will have a fee of like $50 to support the platform and the presenter, keep the lights on for the Institute and our staff. Right now, I don't want to make a big deal of asking for donations for this, but if everybody on the line right now would be willing to take out your phone and send a text message to 26989, I'll say that again in a minute, and you would put on the text message in one word, support SE as in somatic experiencing with no space in between that, you would get a text message back that would give you an opportunity to donate. If you wanted to donate $5 or $10, if this was at all worthwhile for you, we're not running our courses either, so we're a little nervous back at Homestead. No, I'm not even going to say that. Things are awesome. We're in your corner. We're going to keep providing services. But if you'd be interested in helping donate to the Institute and what we're trying to do to support first responders, secondary responders, and you all as therapeutic practitioners in this time, please make a donation. So I'll say it again in case you missed it. It's 26989. You just send a text message to those 5 numbers, and that text message you would send would be the word support SE, and you should get a message right back that would let you know how to do that. There's also a donate button on traumahealing.org/conversations. Okay, enough of this. Let me get Samantha on the line so she can ask her question. Samantha, I don't see your video, and I'm wondering if you can make your video available.
Yes, if I can figure out how.
Oh, cool. Okay, by your mute button, there should be, that option. Maybe I have to stop my video and try and do yours, but
yeah.
Oh shoot, there's something. It's not letting me. It tells me I can give your audio. I can mute or disable you, but I can't. Oh, sorry, that's not.
I'm not seeing that option, which is weird because I've been doing Zoom sessions all week.
Right.
But I can just ask it verbally. If
go ahead and ask it, and I'll be fumbling here in the background to try and make that work so the world doesn't have to fumble with us. Thanks so much. Go ahead, Samantha.
Okay. Hi, Samantha.
Hi, Dave. Hi, Glindy. It's nice to talk with both of you. So my question is about people who have been diagnosed or who have the illness.
Oh, I think I just figured it out. She's going to be out for a second. Samantha, I'm so sorry. Sorry, everybody. We're going to make all the mistakes this week. I think it just interrupted you to put you in the video.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Oh, hey.
Hey.
Good to see you, Samantha.
It's good to see you too. Gosh. So the question is, as we're working with people who have this illness and we're dealing with the fear that's coming in for them as well as the symptoms. And Amy, thank you for sharing about the woman who's already been working with someone like that, because I think it's incredibly relevant to see how powerful these interventions can be. But what I'm finding is there's such fear about the body that it's hard for us to use a lot of our techniques of going to the safe place in a body because there isn't one.
Right.
So I'm just wondering if you can speak to that a little bit.
Right. And that's certainly now with COVID-19, and it can be with any illness, any life-threatening illness as well. And so in a certain way, this is going to sound very not SE-ish, but it's actually very much SE. Don't ask about going to the body. Mobilize, settle, work with the other concepts. Whoa, what, look around right now. What would your eyes like to see? Oh, as you look over at the tree over there you go. That's all. That's it. Don't ask. Don't ask, because that brings them up into limbic, into interpretation, back to limbic, and into fear, into anxiety. Don't ask, just name it. That's the physiological conversation we were talking about an hour ago, is the being with. Oh, Samantha gets it. Wow. All right. So there are times to not ask about that in that way, but to acknowledge when there's a shift in their body state instead.
Nice. Yeah, and I would say too, sometimes there's places in the physiology that are easier to be with, and I would encourage that a little bit of grounding. Sometimes that is something that is experienced as different than that general tracking of where there's tension in the body. That is kind of the default when we're more in a higher sympathetic activation state. As well as where that resting point is between the outside and then the skin, the skeleton, and that awareness of support, how that can create something that's more of a container, and the feeling of container that happens when we are being aware of that very simple reality of this body envelope as it is connected to the environment. And that can be settling. I'd also say that as people, you sometimes just do a little bit of a movement, like even like a little subtle, slow movement of the wrist. Is that okay just to be with that? Right? A little subtle, small movement, tiny movement in the ankle. Just letting that little tiny movement be there. And then notice how that affects the system, because that's a way to just gently titrate the experience of the body as well. And then we don't want to forget about image and how important and powerful image can be. So if you could do anything right now in your imagination, what would it be? Okay, so to help that mobilization to happen when people are feeling a lot of tension, the body feels like, I don't want to go there, that is off limits. Well, we can also play in the image world and help titrate the experiencing that's happening through both resourcing images as well as these mobilization images that can come.
Yeah. There's another possibility here as well, and this may address some questions body workers have, which is to have, in a certain way, you're going to have a client do their own body work, but you're going to direct it, right? So it might be to, rather than here, because that might be too close, but someone can do this, or here is a little less comfortable on some people's shoulders. If there's a message that you'd like your hands to send into your chest right now, or into your belly, or into your legs, what's the message? And have them verbalize it, right? So we're going meaning, thinking, cognition, tactile, touch, behavior, and the message is, I love you. I love you. Okay. Now, ask your hands. So I'm going to just play with this area here for now. Right now, for a lot of people with COVID, this is not a safe area. Right. So come down to the legs. Come down to the legs. Further away. Work from the periphery. In this case. So ask your hands in whatever way they want to. It could be a color. It could be little lights. It could be words. It could be a texture. To say into your legs, into the bones. Can your hands connect with the texture of your bones and send that message? I love you. Soft as fur, right? There, right? You just settled a little. You sense that, right? And so there's a way in which you can use hands-on or non-hands-on way, direct, but you can do it indirect in that way, messaging, right? And that's really holding a container as well.
Right, and all of these are really helping us to modulate that HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, and to help really to downregulate the system when it's feeling under threat. And that can even be something really important to name, and as a psychoeducation piece, that's part of what we're doing. You know, for me, one thing I've been doing a lot with clients lately is actually just paying attention and resting into the back body, and in particular with the kidneys, and resting into that awareness and letting that be something that develops a sense of support. And then from there, orienting. So orienting from the place of that quality of more rest, or more of a sense of an ease, a relative ease of being in the back body. Because often people are up front and very much in the front of their bodies and up high, away from moving out of their lower bodies, and then resting into the back and resting into the lower body, and then letting the neck turn very slowly, staying connected. So going between the 2 points, between kidneys, between that restful lower body, and taking the environment from there is often a really different experience for folks.
So along the same lines, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit, because the other component that I'm seeing a lot of in some of these clients is the grief, because they're actually in a grieving process, because they're scared. And we've been working a lot even with that fear of dying because they are so ill. So I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind, I know it's a very serious thing, but I wonder if you wouldn't mind speaking to that for a moment.
Yeah, yeah. Glenda, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. You know, the first thing that happens in my system when you say that is just settling into the realness of that. And it's true for a lot of us. Even, you know, this is something that being faced with mortality, there's a sobering quality, and we can respond to that. So I think there's a little. So responding to that by kind of going into alarm or shutdown, or we can actually be with it and help a person by being with them, and being with all of us with that, with all of our system. And so for me, when I am doing that, it's being authentic and being moved, being affected as a human being. So I'm in a role, but as Dave was saying, I'm a human being, and I'm also affected by that and supporting. And that brings in also something that we'll be talking about in a little bit in a later part of the series, is using remote touch, and a sense of, you know, I'm just, I'm with you and I'm wondering if this is okay. Always getting permission, and this is optional, but I would like to give you a little bit of touch support from over here. And that basically is that when we place our attention somewhere, it can actually sense into that. And I'm curious how this feels, right? So I'm going to place my hands on their outer upper arms, around the shoulders there. You can see my hands here. And I'm just going to be with that, just from my experience over here, and I'm going to share that. If you could share too what your experience is from within, as a form of support. Another way of feeling more held, more a part of being part of a system together, you know, and creating more coherence within the client's own system at this time when, you know, we're easily kindled up into very high activation or shutdown. And so we really want to bring as much of the ventral vagal online as possible in all the ways we do, and bring support to the fore in terms of our human, real, authentic relatedness.
Thanks, Glindy. I actually felt myself being able to take a bigger breath just from listening to you. It was great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really important to normalize for ourselves as practitioners that it's hard to work with people who are in acute grief and might be dying, or have loved ones who might be dying, and to normalize for them that this is very real possibility, so it doesn't become traumatic grieving and stuck, but to help it move. Yeah.
Indeed.
It's really powerful stuff, guys. I'm going to jump in again, if it's all right.
Yeah.
Samantha, what a wonderful question and a really good conversation to be with you guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to move you over back to the presenter set if you're okay with that. Thanks for being with us. And I want to let you know that, just as we're experimenting with ways of being together today, you guys, Emily and Jane have some things on the questions that there's some similarities and some relatedness there in their question. And I'm wondering, how about, would it be okay if I brought them both in and we kind of have a little dialogue here, and we just keep exploring this conversations format, because that's been my experience of what SE does a lot, right? We explore how it feels to be here like this. So Emily and Jane, if you wouldn't mind gearing up, I'm going to start to get ready to bring you in, if you're okay. And then I want to just address some of the questions that are coming up, what I'm calling the chat, you guys. We're using Zoom webinar format. I know a lot of you are on Zoom these days. We're using the webinar format, so it's a little different than that Brady Bunch screen where everyone's available and you can mute and unmute and video and unvideo yourself. It puts us in the driver's seat as to how that happens. So if you've been trying to figure out that, I saw some questions. That's why you don't have that. We're the ones who set that up. So that's the first thing. And then there's a bunch of questions about the text 26989 and what to text. I've asked Jessie, a tech support person who's on with us, to go ahead and put some responses to some of your questions in the Q&A. We don't have a chat technically, it's all in the Q&A. So if you see anything from Jesse, I cannot put anything in there directly. So we're exploring, and he might be responding to you sort of via me while so we can answer some of your questions. So did get some information about international. I know Canada and Ireland. We have a lot of England, Canada, and Ireland on the line today. So that's awesome. If you can't get there through that text message, you can go to the website, traumahealing.org/conversations. The RSVP is at the top. The donate is at the bottom. And if you'd like to register for future series, we're going to do this 6 more times, and you're not signed up for all of them. You need to go sign up for each one you'd like to be a part of. And I'm sorry we haven't published the whole outline and array of faculty yet, but I can assure you it's awesome. So yeah, please do sign up and join us. And Jessie will be answering, and I'm about to bring in Emily. And I'm sorry, who's the other one? And Jane. I didn't see anything on Jane's about video. Jane, are you okay with us bringing you onto the video?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, wonderful. So this, we said this was going to be an hour and a half session, and sorry. And so we're getting to be about that time. I know Dave and Glindy could be available for about an additional 15 minutes if we'd like to go. But if you need to sign off because we're at time, you've been here, you did your thing. It's been wonderful to be with you. We're researching if CEs might be available for this at some point. So stay tuned to our newsletters. And then I think we'll go for another 15 minutes if you're okay with that, Dave and Glindy.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yep.
Cool. All right, and I'll get out of the way if Emily and Jane, if you could go ahead and, I think since Emily's was up there first, why doesn't Emily start and Jane sort of add, and then let's see how conversation goes online, okay? Thanks all.
Okay, go for it if you've got your question ready.
Hi. Yes, thank you so much for allowing me to ask this. So I just quickly wrote down my thoughts so I was succinct as possible. So as many of us can relate to clients seeking us out to resolve trauma and they're desperate for relief. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on how or whether to delay this work, you know, the complex trauma work because of the heightened anxiety, dysregulation, and fear around COVID. More specifically, my work as a body worker is focused more on developmental rupture and repair, and knowing that, you know, that work can increase agitation and activation at times. You know, whether that work should be delayed, although this population specifically often has difficulty resourcing and grounding because those pathways aren't necessarily laid down for them. So that's my question.
Great. Yes, it's a great question, and I think a lot of people are having similar questions out there. So yeah, so this, if we're delving into deep trauma right now, what might you might have been doing something earlier in your work before the COVID-19 outbreak, and it might be a time to really just focus on stabilization first, just assessing the situation. Is this really, in terms of where the client is right now and all the different demands on their system and what's happening in the world for them, is this really the time to be delving into deeper trauma? Stabilization, what does that mean? How do we work with folks to help them with what's happening? There's enough activation happening in the present moment for us to digest, and we really want to digest that one little wave at a time of activation and deactivation, and allow the system to settle, because that's going to up the capacity to regulate overall. We want to increase that resiliency. And so when we're dealing with a lot of messages of threat out there, we're both when they're on with us and then they get off from that session, then they go and they listen to the news, it can kindle up more activation. And then they're hearing about friends who may have COVID, and they have their own situations in terms of work, in terms of their own health. So there's a lot of different factors here. So we do want to really be conscious of that. Now, in terms of that developmental repair, this can be a great time where we're working with being with somebody, being seen, having somebody holding space for you in a way that is palpable, that is very much part of that developmental repair. We're not perhaps doing it in the same way that we might, especially as a body worker, where you're working with different different traumas and how and going into some of the different layers of that. But for sure, in the present moment, when you were working, you're going to be getting a sense of doing this mirroring, reflecting, and when there is misattunement, and there can be misattunement, or when we miss something that's happening with the client online, we have these opportunities to really strengthen the alliance by that repair, which is just so powerful and so much part of what the healing of attachment rupture is. I'm curious if how that sounds and what Dave would like to add.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, of course, because it's spot on. And in terms of body work, it depends on what kind of body work you're adding SE to. The work from my frame of reference is about helping a system, what's working well enough in someone's body, in someone's physiology, and how can we help it work better? How can we help areas go toward coherence, toward ease? Now, things will get triggered. They just automatically will pendulate that way on their own. Our job then is to really contain it and mobilize it so that it doesn't spike, because the physiology, the fight system in the body is the immune system. And especially for people who are infected, even if they are asymptomatic, the metabolic energy needs to go to the immune system, not toward the trauma vortex work.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And so it's about settling, moving toward coherence and ease. The developmental material is there. It's in the psyche, it's in the physiology, it's in the spirit. And we want to help it move. We want things to move and not spike yet. There'll be time for that later. right? So when it shows up, because it will, it's not if, it's when, it will show up, say, yeah, that was really hard. And notice what happens now. So it might be that you're moving and you're working with the esophagus to release and elongate, or you're having someone do that on their own and you're directing their hand, right? Because that's about taking in from the outside world, right? To help mobilize. So I think that's the part that I would add to what Glindy was saying, is what's working well enough, and how can we help it work weller?
Yeah, and Dave's talking about the trauma vortex and not wanting to add fuel to the fire here. And so, just to remind us all, I know it's basic ST, but it's really, really important. The counter vortex is what we want to strengthen, and that can be through orienting ventrovagal activities, noticing a resource in the moment. It could be through an image. So developing that, so we get that engine of the counter vortex humming. We have to get that humming in a pandemic, not in a pandemic, but especially now. We really want to work with that. And it's not to ignore everything that's happening. It's just going to help us to be able to integrate that so that we're not feeling as overwhelmed, and enhance our container and our capacity to hold what's occurring in the present moment.
Yeah. Jane, did you have a similar or additional part to that question?
Yeah, I know we're getting close on time. I'm seeing a variety of survival responses, and I think the overall experience of people is they can't change what's coming at them. So there's a kind of helplessness. It's unfolding in many ways. In some ways, I'm thinking of this as shock trauma, because it's happened so quickly that people's lives have stopped without any preparation. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'm wondering any thoughts you have about helplessness, about experiencing this helplessness in the context of no preparation for it. And the relationship obviously is so key. It keeps people tethered, but language or specific ways of getting people able to stay with their own experience during this.
Yeah, well, it is a shock trauma, absolutely, and pervasive at the same time, and relational and developmental. I mean, it's
everything.
Yeah, we've got a lot of vortices all vortexing together, right? And the unpredictability of what we are supposed to do. We're told something different almost every day, what to do. And so it keeps people on edge. So how do we respond to it? We can respond like this. We can respond like this. Oh, yesterday they weren't talking about using masks. Oh, today they are, which is very different than, should I use a mask? Right? So how do we respond? And naming, yes, this is in the environment. I can't see it. Yes, I am helpless. For me, I can't go visit my mother now, my 89-year-old mother with a fair degree of dementia. Oh. And when we talk on the phone, or I try to see her face on FaceTime and not her ear, or the ceiling, right? There's only so much I can do. So how do I respond to those limitations? I can freak out, or I can settle and still have the limitations, right? Mm-hmm. Knowing that.
So part of it is then languaging that for our client or our patient, helping them maybe being a little more forthcoming about the process of having to deal with this flow of information, what we might be doing. I mean, ordinarily there's a boundary there, but what we might be doing to stay settled in an unsettled flow.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And they're going to mirror you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So where are you at with it as a practitioner?
And that authenticity is so, it's really important. Every practitioner can check into how that is for them, but part of that holding container is that is that realness and immediacy of that support, and how we all are helping each other right now, that feeling of community. So that's also part of this dyad as well. I just also want to mention, you know, reminding people of the resources that they have in terms of family, friends, activities they can do to help with the sense of helplessness or isolation. It's just that when we get activated, when we feel shut down, we forget. We all can forget, and we need to remind each other of things that we can do, a sense of, you know, that capacity to do that can really help us stay active.
Well, thank you both very much, and to everybody who's online today. Being connected this way is really wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys. Wow, it's been awesome. Jane, Emily, thank you for being willing to let us have a couple of faces on the screen at a time, and chat with us and to be with us. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys back to attendee, and thank you for being here. Emily, there we go. So Dave, Glindy, this has been amazing, really fun. I'm so moved that you were willing to try something weird, you know, and we're all in this just kind of trying, like, how do we modify our own beings for this moment to resource each other? And your wealth of knowledge and experience is clear as great. I really enjoyed, and if you guys could put in the Q&A if you have any feedback about what you enjoyed the most. I was trying to make a poll just in the last moment so I could poll everyone, and I realized, no, I needed to do that in advance. So next week, you'll have a little poll about what you enjoyed the most about our session today. But for now, if you want to put in the Q&A what you enjoyed the most, I'm really curious if you enjoyed more of the dialogues, the information, if you really liked hearing Dave and Glindy give some direct instruction, if you liked exercises, interventions, hearing each other, seeing more than one face at a time. Help us know how we can do this even better next week, because I think we're just going to get better and better at trying to do more inclusion. Glindy and Dave, I know you're not looking at the Q&A because you're busy being with us, but Pamela Duff wrote, it was great to feel the huge shift when you invited a non-presenter into the group. Even before she came on, I felt such inclusion and my energy went up inside. So isn't that exactly, I think, why we call this conversations instead of a training session? I really felt that too. When it got more conversant, it really became super fun. And you guys are just the best for being so adaptable. I think, guys, as we're doing this each week, we're going to get a little better and better. I'd like to send you an email afterwards that says thank you for being here. We don't have that all set up because we scrambled today. If you are interested in donating, if this has been worthwhile for you, and I know many of you, your jobs are compromised, so this is a no pressure, no nothing kind of situation. If you want to, you could also go to traumahealing.org/donate. Some of the people who are having international limitations, we're struggling with that, so I did find out in the background. Traumahealing.org is the website for the Somatic Experiencing International, our Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute. Find out anything more you want about us there. We'll continue to update this page that we've embedded this whole program on, which is traumahealing.org/conversations. Our hopes are, thanks to Jesse and People Productions, that within a few hours after this, you'll be able to go to that website, and today a video of today's presentation will be there. Bear with us as we're figuring out how to make that happen, but then we'll do that each week. I hope each week we get more and more conversant so that it's not just come back and watch the videos, but come back and be with us. Your presence was really important today. Yeah. Lindy, Dave, I can't wait to share with you afterwards. From the very start, we had 120 people chime in where they were, people who know the both of you, sending you messages and greetings, and it's just so awesome in this time while we're so isolated. I'm grinning. I feel this like real sincere joy.
I can feel that.
Right? Yeah. So freaking cool. So thank you everyone for being here. Thanks for putting your questions in the chat. Glindy, Dave, is there anything you'd like to say in closing to especially send us on our way with your wisdom and insights?
I think for me, and I'm constantly reminding myself of this to share it with everybody, is it can feel like we're in it alone, but we're not. and we're physically distancing, but we don't have to be alone in it and socially distancing, and to hold that at the foreground. And there are going to be those moments, right? But then there are these moments like you've created, Ami, for the SE community and beyond, and go for a walk out on the street and say hi from a physical distance to people you don't know. Just say, hey, how you doing? Yeah.
I heard Peter give a talk recently where he said, this is physical distancing, not social distancing. I think we've proven that. Thanks, Glindy, I'm sorry, I think I interrupted.
Oh, yeah. So that sense of social connection that can happen online with other folks in your community, other ways of contacting while staying distant, it's really important to remember that. And also, you know, as part of that, really savor the way that affects your own heart. Because when we savor something and when we feel our own hearts, it actually will reverberate through your system and enhance your immunity, as well as enhance your resilience, enhance your enjoyment of whatever's happening. That'll keep you ongoingly, as you know, we're in this together for the next several weeks or months. We want to keep working with that sense of up-leveling our resilience. And one of the best ways to do that is savoring when things are working, savoring when we're, you know, little moments that are just so precious, and to feel our own, you know, love for both ourselves and for our community and for humanity, you know, for the world. And when we do that, that's something that is palpable for the immune system. And it will help us through this time.
Yeah.
On so many levels.
Well said.
So true. So true. So I think some things I think we can look forward to talking more about, guys, just because we're getting some questions on this. I think it's good as this progresses and the whole community changes, our own hearts may be changing, our minds may be changing, and the experience of the peaks of infection and perhaps loss of life may change. People are asking about children and about grief and processing that. So I want to let you know, we do already have some of those in mind. Someone asked for resources around children. I want to refer you to TheraPlay. We recently offered a webinar about TheraPlay.
Which is
thanks
on
everybody. What's that?
Which is on the traumahealing.org website.
Right. Oh, and another thing on the traumahealing.org website, if you go to resources, we tried to figure out where to put our COVID-19 page. You can find it under resources. I think there's a little pop-up box that tells you to go there. We try to gather information. I'm the director of public health initiatives with the Institute, and really we're poring over the internets and to find resources about your guys' licensing and practices and license portability. We sent an article in the newsletter about it. But you can go there with some great links to people who are tracking how your licensing regulations are changing in each state. I do want to say in closing a disclaimer here. We don't have any information yet about your individual state's license portability, about your conversion to telehealth and your choice to do that. We have our own thoughts, opinions, and hopes and dreams, but legally I want to make sure we step out of any liability there. We are not the expert on how your license applies to telehealth services. And want to invite you to go ahead and do that research, contact your licensing board, ask them what's possible now. If you work in one state, can you work across state lines, et cetera. And also we'll be thinking more about how to support our first line responders, which we all know are medical professionals, our emergency management, law enforcement, fire, but also you guys as mental health and body workers in this time, you are first line responders. So congratulations for being so courageous to up your skill set. We will see you next week, same time, same bat station. Go to register again, go back to traumahealing.org/conversations. It looks like next week might already be filling up too. So we are looking at expanding the attendance for this. I think we found this attendance was pretty manageable. So we're going to explore that. And if you cannot come, but you did sign up, please cancel so someone else can jump back in to your spot because we do have a limited cap. I think that's it. And a big, huge thank you. Peace and health, wellness, wholeness, an embodied being be with all of us. And just the most enormous thank you to Dave and Glindy, also to Marv Tuttle and the entire staff of the Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute out of Boulder, who are working round the clock as secondary responders to try and get every programming opportunity we can out to you guys, probably a lot more communications than some of you wanted, but we just want to support you. And also to Dr. Peter Levine and the founder of this particular modality, which I think has enhanced all of our lives profoundly. Thank you so much. And have a wonderful afternoon, everybody.
Bye, everybody.